So forth. Mayor is present, as well as the city administrator and city attorney. If we will, rise for invocation and pledge of allegiance. Tonight, Pastor Medlin is coming, and we very much appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we give you thanks for this massive, wonderful universe that you created, for this place called Earth. Lord, we give you thanks for this community and its beauty. We give you thanks for the people of this community, the people of many styles and shapes and forms, the people that protect it, like the fire department, the police department, the people that provide medical services throughout the area. We especially give thanks for the people that are providing leadership, the ones that are here tonight, that we'll pray about more in just a minute. Lord, we give you thanks for all those who make contributions to make this a community, because that is what a community is all about. Lord, I just lift up to you the leaders tonight. I ask your blessings upon them for wisdom, discernment, as they analyze the issues and discuss the issues that will lead to decisions to be made in this room tonight for the betterment of this community. Lord, we give you thanks for all you do, the blessings you give us. Be with us tonight, that the things that happen tonight may be in accordance with your will for this community, for the betterment of your kingdom. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you may notice, or I'll point out, we have a bodacious agenda tonight with a lot to cover. So I'm going to be a little bit more on point. I ask that when you do address this, we are going to try and stick more closely to the 3-minute clock. Usually I'm quite liberal with that, but tonight I'm going to try and help us move along. But still in our friendly Lake Helen way, I hope. First on the agenda is, well, number 4 is additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda. Do I have any of those from?
Yes. I gave everybody a copy of the local stormwater issues, additions. I told you at one of the previous meetings I would turn in. I would like that added into the stormwater master plan.
Do you have a number? Or just in the stormwater master plan entirely?
Yeah, it's
so it'll be 70. It's 70. Okay. So let it be for in one, something like that. Okay. Any other additions or deletions? I would like to ask if there are any on these certificates of approval. Are there anything? Is there anything there that's going to be controversial that we'll need to iron out? Or I was hoping to maybe just put that in with the consent agenda rather than wait till the end of the meeting so that we can let those people go.
Quasi-judicial.
Yeah, it's quasi-judicial. So
Oh, it's deeper than that.
You can move it up to the front of the meeting and knock it out. But don't do it.
Can't close it.
Okay, you're right. You're right. Well, but is there anything on it that we need to, that's going to be contested?
Yes, number.
If there's a yes, we'll just leave it where it is in the agenda. That's fine.
Well, I mean, it can be moved up. It's just
Well,
as it combined as one whole unit.
okay. We'll just leave it where it is. Sometimes it's more perfunctory than that. That's fine. If it needs to be discussed, it needs to be discussed. Okay.
It's hard to hear in the back.
I'm sorry. I realize I'm talking too close there. Apologize. Number 5, approval of minutes. Any changes needed on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Presentation to the commission. Mr. City Administrator, would you introduce our Finance Director?
You have to, it's coming, I say it's coming to microphone, but we don't have one. Oh, you do have one, there you go. Zach California.
Zach, there's Zach. If you need it.
David Warren Company will present our auditor. All right.
There you go.
All right. Good evening, Zach Shalford. We do have Tammy Campbell, the partner from McDermott Davis here to present the annual audit for the 2022 fiscal year. After that, I will run through a few financial highlights as we go forward.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here to present the results of the 2022 annual financial statement audit. The audit report, you may have noticed the format has changed slightly, and that is just to bring attention to the audit opinion that's a new audit standard. The city had unmodified opinions on their governmental funds. There was a qualified opinion on the government-wide statements and utility funds, and that's simply since the city has elected not to implement a standard to record OPEB liability. And again, since that's just a management decision, we don't consider that an internal control issue, just a cost-benefit decision. In the government-wide financial statements, the city has positive net position in all three categories. There was a decrease in liabilities in 2022, and this is due to the city being able to recognize the revenue of the remaining ARPA funds that were previously in deferred revenue. So you'll also see an increase in revenues during the year due to those ARPA revenues being recognized, as well as some stormwater grants. The general fund ended the year with approximately $2.1 million in fund balance, and about $877,000 of that was unassigned. And that $877 can be used at the city's discretion. The city has relatively low levels of debt. There was about $103,000 remaining outstanding on the SRF loan, and there was $130,000 on the city's finance purchases. Our reports showed that there were good internal controls, no material weaknesses or comments for improvement noted. The city is also in compliance with the Florida statutes tested as part of our audit. In the separate letter to the board, you will see there were no significant changes in accounting policies during the year. The significant estimates were the same as previous years: the allowance for doubtful accounts, the estimated useful lives of your capital assets, and the allocation of the FRS pension liability between governmental and utility funds. We didn't have any audit misstatements, no audit adjustments, and there were no disagreements or issues in dealing with management. Overall, a clean audit opinion. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Are there any questions for the commission?
Yes.
Commissioner Rutledge.
If you could please elaborate a bit on significant risks identified.
Yes.
It says the city's management could override internal controls. Could you just explain what that sentence means a little bit more?
Right. So as part of our audit, we look at what are called significant risks, so areas where things could go wrong. And we design our procedures to make sure we look at that. There's always the risk that management could go outside of established internal controls to commit fraud or do anything. So we always consider that a risk. We did not note anything or find any issues. That just was something in our minds during our audit. We did some journal entry testing and did some unpredictability testing to make sure we could kind of look and see, test, and see that we didn't find anything. We didn't find anything, so no concerns, no issues with that.
Okay, and I have one other question about the GASB statement number 75. And it looks like in several areas noted that we did not implement that.
Correct.
And could you just elaborate a bit on that?
Right, that's the standard for showing an OPEB liability, which is just an actuarial liability, which would be shown on your government-wide financial statements and on your utility fund statements, where you would estimate the actuarial cost of providing health insurance at implicit cost. And since the city decided it wasn't worth showing that liability to have to go through the actuarial calculations every year, the city's just decided to accept that qualified opinion. So we are noting the reasons for that qualification.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none. I assume do we need to accept this audit or just note that it's been given to us, or what do we need to do anything official with this?
Usually, I believe the commission make a motion to accept.
We have a motion to accept the audit as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit as presented.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Eckert, a second from Commissioner Rutledge to accept the audit as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Thank you very much. You're still holding the mic. You have more to say, don't you, sir?
I'll just hit a few of the other financial highlights. I'll try to do a quick version as much as we can. Recognizing the agenda. First, relative to GASB 75 and that kind of note in the opinion, I don't know, the last thing we talked about, since that decision predates every one of those, except Commissioner Bassett, who was here and we talked about at the time, is the city was paying, I believe, $2,500 or $3,000 a year to basically have an actuary calculate a purely theoretical number. And the city did nothing with that report except put one number in this document to comply with that accounting standard. So when we switched into this role, one of the recommendations that I did bring to the commission at that time was to say, yeah, it's a change in saying, the auditor has to say, yes, we didn't do it, but beyond that, we're paying $3,000 for something that, in my opinion, is not worth the paper it's printed on. It's just to comply with accounting standards. So just for a quick background, kind of also cover that piece. There was passed out a PowerPoint presentation. Obviously, we don't have the AV. I know we have a lot of copies on the table. I think I saw a lot passed out. Kind of the highlights. Tammy did cover all of the audit reports, so I won't go into those. From an overall fund balance trend, we were substantially up. Most of that due to the ARPA funds, that $1.4 million being recognized as revenue in the current year. With that, as we looked at the general fund balance reserves, about $2.1 million. Over half of that, $1.2 million, is what's called committed fund balance, and that's where there's basically a restriction placed internally by the commission through policy. Within that, there was about $230,000 was our hurricane reserve balance as of the end of the fiscal year. And then the balance of that was about $975,000, which represents the unspent ARPA money as of September 30th, 2022. That difference there about the $427,000, which is on slide in that presentation as well, kind of reconciling where we're at. That was used for the Virginia project last year, bringing us to $975,000. We factor in the amounts that were included in the current year budget to cover the garbage shortfall as well as the stormwater shortfall based on the way it's budgeted. That's another $435,000, bringing us to a net of about $540,000 in terms of what we used up in fiscal year 22 plus what had been earmarked to be used to cover the current year. I know there were some questions on that, so I didn't want to touch on that piece as well. From a reserve standpoint, the general fund, we are in compliance. We're in our target range, about 31% reserve, looking at our assigned and unassigned fund balance. The utility fund as well is right about 50%, which is in line with our target there of 40 to 60%. The only note that does show on the slide, just to acknowledge it for the record, so operating revenues in the utility fund were down. That's due to the meter issue, which of course has been being worked on, with that room being improved and so forth. So I did want to just acknowledge that in terms of kind of the usual number, looking at just the numbers themselves. Those are really the big highlights, but I'm more than glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Thank you, sir. Any further discussion on financial reports at all? Hearing none, we move to item 6B. Woods Homeowners Association wishes to address the commission. Mr. Administrator, would you like to introduce this?
Well, I'll let them come up and introduce themselves. Roxanne Goodman, and I believe the attorney for the HOA. We've had a number of discussions, I presume, concerning the acceptance of roads. Okay, yeah, we're right. Just as a, maybe you're going to say this, but from the city's matter of history, the woods started development in 2004. At the time, it would have been a typical act of the city to adopt the roads that they were constructed at that time. For reasons unknown, the city did not accept the rights of way for public maintenance, and they have sat in that particular legal limbo since that time. Both the previous HOA, which is really the developer, and now the current HOA, which is the real one, we sat and met and tried to figure out how to solve the problem. The problem is there is a liability potential on the part of whomever is responsible for the maintenance of those roads. And we're trying to figure out how best to transfer those roads from an HOA to the city. It should have been done 20 years ago, but it wasn't. And I think, I think Stephen Thunder, I don't think
So good evening, commissioners, Mayor Lane, city administration, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you state your name and address and use the mic?
And we can't hear him.
My name is Roxanne Goodman. I reside at 391 West Michigan Avenue. I stand before you on behalf of the...
Is it turned on?
It's on.
Okay. So my name is Roxanne Goodman. I reside at 391 West Michigan Avenue. I stand before you on behalf of the Woods of Lake Helen Homeowners Association. I am the standing president, and with me here today is Kurt Sniffen, the VP of the HOA, and our attorney, Brian Hess. In a few minutes, our attorney, Brian, will address you in regards to the main topic of discussion. However, before then, I would like to review with you a few points of consideration. And actually, before that, I would like to ask any of the residents within the subdivision to please stand so that the commissioners and the audience can have a visual of who's present. Thank you. Yes, sorry, thank you. If you were to ask any homeowner in our subdivision where they lived, you can rest assured that they would respond to the city of Lake Helen, and that include their street address. While we are homeowners within the woods of Lake Helen, we are first citizens of this great city, often referred to as the gem. Not only do we live here and pay taxes, we make friends here, we attend events here, and we serve on boards here. We volunteer here. We go to church here, and our children go to school and play here. For many of us, we plan on raising our children here and to be here for a very long time. As such, as our attorney approaches the podium, we ask that you consider that our subdivision is no different than any other neighborhood in the city, and that we are as much a part of the city as any other. Thank you for your time, Brian.
Hello, everybody. So basically my role, and yeah, that's kind of loud. My role here today is to kind of talk about, from the association's perspective, the legalities of the issue. And of course, the city manager did a good job of introducing part of what that concern is. And so I'll go through our perspective of what we understand to be the city's perspective, and then I'll approach what our perspective is on that. So as we understand from communications with the city's manager, it's the city's position that even though the roads through this community were built almost 20 years ago, and such streets were dedicated by plat to the city, that the city never assumed responsibility for the streets. As we understand, in order for the city to assume responsibility for public streets built almost 20 years ago and dedicated to the city at that time by plat, the city is asking for the Homeowners Association to provide as-built of all roadways within the community, have core samples of the roadways analyzed, and put into place an agreement for the association to assume certain restoration costs if necessary for any abnormal maintenance items. That's basically a summary of it. As we understand, the costs of these are anticipated to be in the tens of thousands of dollars and potentially approaching $100,000 or more to the owners within the association. From the association's perspective, the city seems to be operating off of a number of misassumptions. First and most important, the association has never owned the roads, any property related to the roads, or had any legal responsibility for the roads. Nor did the association build the roads, nor is there any statute or legal document in place that would assign ownership of these roads or maintenance responsibilities for the roads to the association. The roads are, simply put, the roads are not the association's roads. They never have been, they never were intended to be, and they never will be without a separate legal action. The roads were dedicated by plat to the city before the association was even formed. The association's governing documents do not provide any responsibility for the maintenance of these roads to the association. It would be at a minimum inappropriate, if not an improper or even an illegal trespass, for the association to maintain, alter, or accept responsibility for these roads. Moreover, such request is improperly burdening the association with maintenance costs for roadways that have been built and used as public roads since before the inception of the community. Finally, while it's not clear as to the intent of the writings, it appears that correspondence from the city through Attorney Bonnie Groot to Attorney Alex Dobrev, ostensibly representing the developer back in 2011, may have cleared any deficiencies that were in place with regard to the development order that was set up for the development of the community. It should be noted that the association was not included in any of that correspondence. It may be that the city has a cause of action to request those items from the developers, road builders, other parties, but it's our perspective that it's completely inappropriate and improper for the city to seek these from the association that has no legal responsibility or even right to take the steps that are requested. The association by law has a fiduciary duty to its members to spend its funds wisely, and to agree that these expenses is arguably in derogation of its duties under the law. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kurt Smith, Delaware Avenue. I just want to reiterate some things that Roxanne said in my own personal views. I am the Vice President of the HOA, and like Roxanne said, we consider Lake Helen our home. Not the woods of Lake Helen, but Lake Helen our homes. When I'm asked where I live, I say I live in Lake Helen. And then people ask me where I say, in the woods of Lake Helen. First, those homes, is how sometimes it's perceived. We are part of the city. We're not going anywhere. We just can't uproot 101 homes and move them anywhere we want. But all of our residents enjoy being here. There's a reason why we moved to Lake Helen, because it is the gem. It is a beautiful town. It's a town that we want to set up, most of us, I think, to retire in, if I'm not mistaken. It's our forever home. So, I would just like to say that, to help us to take on the responsibility of the streets. And I think it would be admirable if our city commissioner, Rod Reddick, made a motion tonight for y'all to accept these streets you know, as it is written and as we have stated, that, you know, we don't have any responsibility to do these streets. If you really think about it, Pennsylvania runs right through our subdivision. High, Volusia, Summit. 4 of the 8 streets are city streets. What's the difference? And if you look at our streets within the woods, they're better shape than 90% of the roads throughout Lake Helen. So we've done our due diligence to try to keep up with them the best that we can. And they're in better shape, like I said, than most of the streets here in Lake Helen. So Roger, put it upon you tonight to make a motion. As your commissioner, thank you.
Well, thank you all for your presentation. I'll say, just on my own behalf, not put words in anybody else's mouth, but I appreciate your leading off with you consider Lake Helen home. Well, we consider you part of us, but there's no distinction at all. We love having you. It's one of the prettiest parts of this town, and we're all proud and just really pleased with how this development has worked over the years and has grown to fruition. It really is lovely and wonderful.
I just have a quick question. The new subdivision.
Faith Grove?
Faith Grove, thank you. Are you guys assuming the responsibility of those streets already?
There aren't any streets. They did some improvement on the side road there that was currently a city street. They did some improvement there. The developer did as a kind of an agreement. But there were no streets that weren't already part of the city.
All right.
And I understand your point as you made it. It makes perfect sense. I don't know all the details, and I'm no attorney, so I'm not going to make any effort to argue that case. I will ask staff if you'd like to respond to any of the things that they brought forward, just for our knowledge's sake, as commissioners.
Well, I can tell you, I started working for Lake Helen in 2015, 2016, and ever since then, I've always been told the city never accepted the streets. Never been told why. As I said, they never accepted the streets, and it has been a discussion item ever since. But we tried to look at all the records we could and talk to people. You know, I contacted Lonnie Root. You know, asked him, because the letters we have, 2004, 2005, there's correspondence back and forth about things that need to be done out there. And then in like 2005, all of a sudden, the letters stopped. And then there's the 2011 letter from the city attorney who said, I think everything's in compliance or something. It was like to a buyer of the subdivision. But one of the things that was in the letters that was supposed to be done in 2004 and 5 is the improvements to the swale that was done part of the hurricane before that created a lot of controversy. Those exact improvements that the city did in 2022 were supposed to be done in 2004 per the letter, because they were asking to get their bond back. They had a $77,000 bond. Well, I know that wasn't done because we did it in 2022. And so we've tried to figure out what happened. And I think we reached out to Don Fidel. What happened in that time frame? I reached out to the city attorney. Why did we not accept the roads? And haven't been able to find out why. You know, there's specific issues. So, but there is a law that says just because a plat is recorded in public records, the local government does not assume making responsibility to build or maintain the roads unless they voluntarily assume that responsibility. And you can do that by words in the plat, or you can do it by action. You can just start assuming the roads and maintain them. And I don't know those have occurred. So the law addresses specifically, just because it's recorded in a public record, the city doesn't automatically assume responsibility to build or maintain those roads. I don't disagree that it could be that there's nothing that says it's their responsibility, They are the successor in title to the developer who owned all that land and created the subdivision. I don't think it's a good situation, mainly because it's a public road. So if somebody gets hurt on that road, this city's going to be sued. But we don't have maintenance responsibility. I don't know if that would protect us or not, but if those roads aren't properly maintained, but they're a public road, I think it creates liability, potential liability. I mean, they're obviously going to, we're in deep pockets, so we're going to be dragged into that. So there's a couple options. One is the city does assume responsibility for that. My understanding of the city's engineer went and asked the engineer, what do we need to ask from the bare bones to accept responsibility for this? And for instance, some of the stuff that was asked for the as-bills, that should have been done when the subdivision was built. We have no as-bills. So we have the plans, but any development you get built, you have the plans, and you get the as-bills to show that what was actually built complies with the plans. That was never done, to my understanding. And I think the core samples will show how much asphalt was there. Did they put enough asphalt down as required by the plan? So my understanding of what has been requested or recommended to be requested by our engineer are the things that should have been done back when that road, when the road was built, subdivision, constructed, and platform, and the road dedicated to the city. The other complete opposite thing to do, cities vacate the roads. Then they're theirs. We just say it's not a public road anymore. That creates a lot of issues for them, and we don't want to do that haphazardly. We've got to work through some issues for that. But it is an option for the city to say, look, we're vacating the roads. We don't maintain them. No one's maintaining them. It creates a liability. And then they could gate them off if they wanted to. Private interest, it's a private road, just like any other private subdivision you go into. But that's kind of where it sits. And I don't think our engineers here to explain why his recommendation of what was, he recommended we request as part of accepting the responsibility to maintain the roads. Because if we would have accepted them back in 2004, or whenever they were completed, we would have got warranties, maintenance bonds, warranty bonds, a lot of stuff back then that I think is what Lee was trying to protect the city for. We're going to accept this now. Now we have 20 years of use on these roads. Maybe we need some protection for the city to make sure in case something fails within 6 months or a year, whatever the case may be, that there would be some assistance from the HOA.
I have a question on that, precisely, on the bonds. That would protect the city, if things were to go awry. How long would those bonds generally cover?
1 year.
So we're well past any period that would have been covering anyway.
Yeah. No, the warranty and the contract may have gone longer from the contractor, developer, may have gone longer than that, but usually your bonds through construction are 1 year.
I had another question that came to mind. I know you said, Brian, you said that the association has never owned those roads or in any way. Typically, and I don't have a great deal of experience in this, but what experience I do have, the developer does all that work, and then at some point, after a certain percentage of the lots have been sold, then all of what the developer was responsible for devolves to the association.
That's correct in part, but that's only as to certain tracts of land. It's our position, and what I've seen, my firm works with over 850 associations through Central Florida. And I've never, ever seen this situation before in about 20 years of practice. And what normally happens is tracts that are intended to be dedicated to the association are what are assumed from the developer to the association. I've never seen a case where, well, first of all, there was a statement that I do disagree with that the attorney said that the developer, that the association assumes responsibility for the developer's actions. And that's incorrect. In case law,
I don't think I said that.
Sorry?
I don't think I said that.
Okay, well, that was what I understood you said. They may have just been in passing. But what I want to make clear is that the developer was a separate entity from the association. Sure. The association didn't assume any of those liabilities of the developer. Okay. And that's really where we are right now, is that it's our position that they're not our roads, never were our roads, never intended to be our roads. We weren't responsible for building them, we weren't responsible for maintaining them. I agree, it's a question of whose roads they are, but they're not ours.
Is the developer still in this world? Is that one of those developers that no longer exists?
Company went out of business.
That's what I figured. Okay. All right, those are the questions I have. Yes, Mr. Bassett.
Quite frankly, you can make the argument that the city dropped the ball and didn't make sure that the city handed the roads and et cetera, were handed over to us in a timely fashion. You can also make the argument that the roads have been there and being used by all of us in the city for a long time, and there doesn't seem to be any serious damage to the roads, et cetera, and typically if there is a problem with roadways, they would have reared their heads already. I fear that if we don't collectively decide that the woods, which is every much a member of this community as everyone else who lives in this city, that will drive a wedge between us, and that's a mistake. It's my opinion that this board should move forward, have staff move forward quickly. I would like to see the list of stuff that they say is going to cost them $100,000 to bring forward. And I would like an opportunity to review that list. I've been in the underground utility business and development business my whole life. I don't necessarily think that soil borings are necessary at this point. Yes, if it would have been a year after the subdivision was in place, I could see that. Many of the things that we may be asking for and should have asked for 20 years ago, we have probably lost our opportunity to do that. So if this takes a workshop to hammer it out, I don't really care, but to leave this in a state of limbo for another year would be a huge mistake.
Thank you. Commissioner Ecker. Okay, do you want the floor or are you just passing the mic?
Yes.
The floor is yours if you want.
Yes, the vote. Number one, when they proposed building the woods in Lake Helen, it was a great relief because we had a choice of having a subdivision there or to continue putting out stolen cars that were being burned there. So it was a good thing that the woods was built. You are wrong on one street. Volusia Avenue between Maine and Pennsylvania was not part of the city prior to the woods being built. That was installed by the developer. All the other ones you named were, including the ones on the south end that go towards the retention pond, were all part of the city prior to the woods being developed. I've also got a question about the, one of the things I heard was that when Jason Yarborough was here, there was an agreement being worked on that got dropped when the issues about his financial things came up. Was any of that in the history of your research?
That I was here then. There were some discussions going on about, and maybe the roads were included in that, but it also dealt with the obligation to build and dedicate a park playground to the city, and there was also an issue that there were certain improvements that were supposed to be, if certain things weren't done by the developer, they could no longer get building permits after a use a certain point. And I don't think that was ever enforced. And I think what sort of happened is, this subdivision started in 405, then we hit that big real estate recession, and then somebody came in to pick up the development again, and I think the city was just so happy that somebody was to start doing development again there, that was a letter from the city attorney, probably, But I can't specifically say I remember any discussion about the roads, other than always being told that we never accepted them, we never given a reason why. But the main discussion was, we did not, the city at that time, maybe still today, did not want the playground area, and they didn't want to build it dedicated or something like that. But the main discussion, that agreement, the main discussion was around the obligation to build a park and dedicate it. Is my memory.
The last comment I'd like to make is I would like to have been a part of some of the prior discussions to this instead of just being here now. But I've been doing as much research as I could on it to find out about the past stuff. And I know the contractor that built the roads years ago did the core samples and everything, but nobody knows what happened to them. And I think they got lost when the company closed down. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. But I would also like the city staff to work on something to come up with an agreement or a resolution or something for the city to accept the roads in the woods so that it can be done, whatever's got to be done, a mutual agreement between the two groups. Because they are part of Lake Helen, they've always been, and they saved us from having to extinguish more vehicle fires.
Mr. Bishop, did you want to weigh in on that?
Just want to know if they know what they're getting into with the city doing maintenance.
I'll assume that's a rhetorical question.
Yes.
I just voicing opinions, which is largely what we're doing tonight. I certainly agree that this is something, I agree, I guess 100% with what Commissioner Basso said. I don't disagree with anybody else either. But these roads are well established. They've been traveled on a lot. If they were going to fail because of a construction issue, that would have happened a long time ago. Not that anything's perfect, but it held up very well. But I'm not too worried about those core samples, but I'm not in a position of defending the city from a legal standpoint. I think we do need to have some further, maybe a workshop meeting. I don't know what we need to do to finish this, but I don't want to drag it out. I'm not trying to postpone anything. I think it would be good to get this done and get it done relatively quickly. But there may be some points we need to iron out. Mr. Administrator or Mr. Attorney, do you want to how would you like to proceed on this from the city's?
Before you proceed, I have one question. Does the audience, if they have a question, can they, if the city?
Oh, and we do have one blue card, and I can open up the floor, yes.
Okay, thank you.
As I said, I think the only way you can really describe the situation is it's a mess. And it has been a mess for 20 years. There are two things that should be reviewed when a subdivision is constructed. One is, prior to construction, that the design of the engineers is appropriate, correct, and produce the results that are anticipated. We now have the experience with the woods, and in all but one small area, which happens to be the eastern end of Washington, it was designed the way it should have been designed and constructed, we think, the way it should have been constructed. The only way you know if something is not constructed properly, however, is do get a surveyor, go out and do a survey of the completed roads, compare those to the engineering design. And that's the crux of the matter. Everybody who has talked about, the roads are there, have been 20 years, and they're showing very little wear and tear, are absolutely correct. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that they were probably built correctly. I mean, just the fact that they're there and they're functioning correctly, they're fine. But we don't know what's below the surface, and we don't know the grades, if they're done correctly. We do know, again, in Washington, they were done incorrectly as a design flaw. So we simply have to know if the construction was done properly, and that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. It's a matter of
city attorney calls it a liability, I call it a simple cost. If we accept the roads, which we would normally have done in 2004, then we are liable for the maintenance of the roads, and we're responsible for any errors that are created by the developer, by the design engineers at that time. But then we would have had a bond to correct those issues at that particular time, and we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Now it's 20 years later, everybody who worked on that project is effectively gone. And my responsibility is to make sure the city doesn't, without their eyes wide open, accept the liability of something we just don't know what it is. If obviously the commission wants to accept that liability without knowing what it is, that's their prerogative. And it's my understanding, it's my position to explain that there are things we just don't know about the woods that would be revealed from a survey which should have been done again 20 years ago. That would give everybody the ease to know that there's no problem to be concerned with. So, anyway,
If you'd like, I can read off the things that were requested from the city.
That would be nice. Yes.
Okay. Number one is that a 24-inch wide white stop bar needs to be repainted with thermoplastic paint. A 25 linear foot double yellow line needs to be painted with thermoplastic paint. The stormwater system should be cleared of debris and inspection reports submitted to the city. That's really not part of this because stormwater remains their responsibility anyway. So that's not really part of this. Dirt and weeds should be cleared from the gutters. That's the same comment. I don't think that's part of this issue. They're responsible for stormwater. Stop signs should be replaced with reflective signs, 3M high intensity, prismatic or equal. The bolts need to be stainless steel. The current signs have low grade reflectivity and rusting bolts. Does Lake Helen have a requirement for decorative sign poles? If so, some will need to be upgraded to decorative make and model. And probably the last two are the bigger ones. Number 7 is as-built needs to be provided in CAD format. And number 8 is pavement testing results need to be submitted. I understand the comment that it's been 20 years. If there was a efficiency in pavement, that probably would have materialized by this point. But so that's item 8. But item 7 says we want to make sure that really what we're saying is we want to make sure the roads are in the right way. Did you put them where they said they were going to go? Or do we have a situation where a paved road actually deviates outside the right of way when we're on someone's private property? And that would probably be a bigger issue if you're asking me, which would be the biggest one, is to make sure, to have a survey to make sure that those roads were put where they were supposed to be put. Because our records don't reflect that. An as-built survey was done. I know we requested from the HOA, they looked through all their records, they couldn't find these same records in there. So probably from a legal perspective, the as-built to make sure, as-built survey is the most important thing in my mind. The engineer may have a different opinion, but from my mind, the as-built survey is the most important thing to make sure the roads are where they were supposed to be.
How much would or do we know how much that survey approximately would cost?
No, I don't. No. I've not talked to, I've asked the engineer, he did not have an idea what the surveyor would charge. It's not an engineer, it's a surveyor.
Right.
And it's, you know, I think I heard a little snicker about roads being built in the right of way. You'd be amazed at how many roads that you live on are not in right of ways, but they're there.
Well, that was actually something that was going through my mind, and so many of the roads in town are not already. Right. If we get a few more, does that really matter that much? I know it's a liability, but I mean, chances are these are pretty darn close because they were built to a higher standard than many of our roads, which are really just kind of, they just put some millings down over where people generally drove rather than ever be a contractor. So I'm not trying to be flippant. I know these are legitimate legal questions and legal liabilities, but it does seem like we might be getting a little too careful. But maybe I'm wrong.
I would suggest somebody suggested earlier, Mr. Mayor, that the workshop may be appropriate with the HOA members and the commission sitting down. We can go through the items that were just mentioned by the city attorney. I think almost all of those were negotiated away in some way, form, or fashion. Because the only one we're really concerned with is were the roads constructed to the design of the engineer, meaning materials, location, and that's the main concern. If we're going to take it over, we want to take over something that is where it should be, and we don't have a liability issue with something going astray through no fault of the city.
You know, of all the things that I've heard, the only one that I'm concerned with is a survey. And all the rest of that stuff can go away, because as far as...
We basically made it go away.
Okay.
All the rest of it, yeah. The survey is the only thing that's been a sticking point. It is unfortunately the most expensive item.
Well, can we get an estimate or a bid so that we'll know what we're negotiating here, or would that be inappropriate for us to get that number if we think they should do it? Maybe I'm out of turn here.
Well, if I can read one thing, also,
Sure.
This is a letter from Don Findell. From Don Findell in January 6, 2005, this is the last letter. The first item, what was happening back in this period of time is the developer at the time was asking for their bond back. They approached the $77,000 bond. They said, hey, we've done everything, we need to give us our bond back. And there's correspondence back from the city, we'll do everything. And here's one of the things they said. The sidewalk on High Street between Pennsylvania Avenue and Ohio must be removed and relocated to the edge of the subdivision lot lines. Well, that tells me it wasn't put where it's supposed to go.
Right.
When I hear that. So it happens, and it sounds like it happened. I mean, was that corrected? I don't know. But I know that the balance of this, what I just read, wasn't done because that's what the city had to do last year during the hurricane. Because the rest of it talks about the drainage swale must be constructed between the edge of the sidewalk and the edge of High Street road service. The termination point of the Miami curve on Washington Avenue must be reconfigured to discharge it into the High Street swale. The catch basin, box culvert, stormwater conveyance system must be constructed adjacent to the existing large retention pond on High Street in order to convey stormwater collected in the High Street drainage swales to the existing retention ponds or to the new retention pond. Engineering plans for this work must be submitted to the city engineer for the city to review and approve, and permits must be obtained from St. John's River Water Management District if required. That's all one item. And the first sentence was the one I read about move the sidewalks. Everything after move the sidewalks, my understanding, I'm not an engineer, is what we did back in the fall. That's exactly what we did to address the flooding, to try to address the flooding issue. So that tells me everything but I can tell you everything but the first sentence of paragraph 1 wasn't done. Right. Now, was the first sentence done? I don't know. But that's the first sentence says sidewalks are put not in the right place. Now, what else is not in the right place? Maybe it's just the sidewalks. I don't know. But that's what the as-built will show. So,
What's the date of
I know the sidewalk on High Street.
that is 2005.
Okay, but then you have a letter on 2011 that
Let's speak up. We can't hear you.
Yeah, there was a letter from 2011 where everything was supposedly okay from the city attorney because someone was coming in to buy the subdivision. But there's no documentation showing any of this stuff was done.
But there is a letter stating that everything is complete.
None of the plan, none of the work that was supposed to be done, there's any evidence of it. And actually, one of the things we know wasn't done.
What I'm confirming is in 2006 there was a list, and then in 2011 there is a letter that's saying that everything's confirmed and stuff. I just want
I can go back and I don't know exactly what it says, or more or less says that. But I'm telling you, what I just read to you wasn't done in 2011 because it wasn't done in 2022.
But so.
It wasn't done.
Okay.
So
We have a letter in 2011 saying that.
Please use the mic.
Sorry. We have an email confirmed, and the attorney did also say that everything was done in 2011, right?
I'll find the letter.
We've also said that it is the due diligence, or what I'm hearing now, the due diligence of the city, and that we're at this point anyway, right? That the streets were not turned over, right? There was things that should have been done for the streets to be turned over, and the city did not. Maybe not this list of people here, but in the past it was not done. There's a letter in 2011 saying everything has been completed, but that last step of actually turning over the city streets was not completed.
before the city
Right.
accepted
That's not our
responsibility.
responsibility now to come back and say, okay, now we're gonna do as-bills to confirm that you didn't do what you were supposed to do, either prior to 2011 or at the point of that 2011 letter.
Well,
That's
it's
the
a-
point we're
and
being
in no-
saying.
well, and in no time has the city accepted responsibility for those roads, and you're asking us to do that now.
But you should have.
Well, you should have done things too. You're the HOA should be doing things, the developer. The developer was the HOA. You took over for the developer.
You accept responsibility. So there are differences of opinion, and they're legitimate. There are differences of opinion. And I certainly understand nobody wants to start by saying, especially from a legal point of view, nobody wants to start by saying, oh yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right. That's not the way attorneys work. Much more the way commissions work and associations work. I think we're probably much closer than it seems like in the last 5 minutes. I really think we might be. I think there's considerable goodwill here at Willow, and I think we can get there. I don't know how much it's going to take to get us over the hump, but I know we won't get over the hump tonight. That's not our goal. We're not going to get over the hump fully tonight. I think a workshop at the very least is in order, and we need to do some things prior to that workshop to be prepared for it so that it can be constructive rather than just restating our differences. I do have.
I was just wondering, whose responsibility was it to make sure that those roads were as-built? Did the city have any responsibility in that at all?
Yes. Yes.
And did we give back the bond, or did we keep the bond?
There you go.
So who's supposed to provide the as-built plans? Okay, yes, sir.
My answer to that question is, the city has leverage at a point. The point where they either will or will not give a building permit to build a house. In my opinion, if the city wanted to maintain its leverage to get those things so that the streets could be turned over, they should have refused to issue any building permits until then. And so, in my opinion, I really do believe that although there's risk involved, although there's things that should have been done, I don't see holding the HOA responsible for things that anyone sitting here today, or the majority of people sitting here today, had any opportunity to take care of those things when they should have been taken care of. And so, with that said, I would really like to move forward and find, to me, the one big issue in the whole thing that bothers me more than anything else is the survey to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. And maybe there could be some joint responsibility in the cost of that survey. Maybe it can be pushed out over time through taxes or whatever. But I know that every home is on someone's lot and they own that. That becomes theirs. So if lines are blurred, if things are not where they should be, that's going to come back to bite everyone or anyone where the line may be blurred. So if we can get, as far as I'm concerned, if we can get a cost on what it's going to be to take the survey and at least have a conversation about how maybe jointly we can take care of that responsibility, then I think we can get home quickly.
I tend to agree very much with that. We do want to get this on quickly. No, not yet. You can ask, but I'm moving on to one other thing. I'll let you be the first speaker, okay, and then we're going to move to public speakers. But what I don't want to do is let it just become a big argument tonight, because it doesn't need to be. We all want, I mean, you're part of the city, as you opened up with. We are, this is the city. This is where we're just trying to figure out our stuff. This is not us against you. This is our stuff. And we're just trying to work out the details. And we want to do it amicably and easily and spending as little of our money as we possibly can. But still protecting all of us at the same time. Because if there were liabilities, it's our liabilities. We need to make sure we handle it properly. We can't just all go yuck yuck in this money and move on. We have to do it right. So we'll get there. I don't want it to degrade into anything contentious. It just doesn't need to. I really don't believe it needs to. I do have about 5 or 6 blue cards. Kurt, I said you can be first, you can, and then we'll be Kelly Frasca. Yeah, if you'll take this and then pass it down the line. Absolutely. Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate your patience.
Kurt Smith, 491 Delaware, West Delaware. Excuse me. Just a couple of things to reiterate. Stop signs were put in our subdivision by the city, which means they're responsible. All right, that's number one. Number two, this has been ongoing for 2 years. How much communication did Lee give you guys prior to this meeting? That you guys are not prepared to listen to what's being said. I'm going to take a survey. Did you get any information from Lee about this?
It's really not appropriate to...
Okay, you're right. But just think about that. He has known about this. We were actually supposed to be on the agenda last month, but we got pushed back because of the Orange Camp Point thing. All right, and we accepted that, you know. But you're starting, it just, some of the responsibility doesn't, all responsibility falls on the city. If you guys are putting stop signs in our subdivision, or in the subdivision, you guys are already starting to assume responsibility of it, regardless. Because what if those stop signs were placed wrong? Then now who's liable? The city or us? I mean, that's the question I have. Because if it's going to make us liable, take the damn things out. But we want them there for safety. And I get it. All right? I know I'm in a 30 park. I'm not going to be able to use all my minutes for some reason. But just saying. Stop signs were put in by the city, so you guys have already now assumed responsibility of these streets by doing so, and have put us in a liability issue if something's wrong or misplaced on those stop signs. And to have us fix those stop signs that were requested by the city, that were put in by the city, come on. That's not right and it's not fair. Thank you.
Kelly Frasca. And after Kelly will be Nancy Weir.
Kelly Frasca, 616 John Street. First and foremost, the residents in the woods are our neighbors, and we need to treat them with just as much respect as we have if we're in other developments. I know Scott touched on a letter which I was going to ask about. The letter in 2005, which was between Don Findell, Lonnie Group, and the developer. That developer was WLW, which is still in business today. So if there's any questions, you can reach out to them. That $77,000 bond that the city required to be held for the completion of the retention pond, has that been returned? And when was it returned? Why are there no public records on that? That seems to be the ongoing situation.
I don't mind bringing up things for us to research, but we don't need to really have spot answers. So let's bring up things that we can look at. That's great. We'll do that. We'll make notes.
And that was the question that I had. Was the money returned? So.
Thank you. Nancy Weary, and after Nancy will be Lance Spears.
Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. I have a couple of points I'd like to make. Number one, the park. Becky Woody was here when we discussed the park. I'm not even sure why it was discussed for you all. The city's taken it over because it's always been the HOA's private park. There's that.
Nancy, can you use my phone? I can't hear you.
Yes. Second point is the road grades seem to be an issue on High, which are not really in the woods. How were they approved? How were these problematic roads that have caused this road that has caused so much issue? How were they approved? Next thing, there's a list HOA last year. One of those items was the painting of the road requirement. How does the city handle the painting of the roads throughout the city otherwise? Because I know when they did the police department, those guys are out there rolling it with public works. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in our roads when public works is out there with a roller. Let's be honest, let's be fair. Who created that list for the HOA? The checklist.
City engineer.
So in 2011, we have a letter from the city attorney then. They were ready. In 2005, you returned a bond of $77,000. Everything's been met. It's time for you all just to accept the roads. You basically have anything. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Bassett,
I agree with everything other than saying everything's been met. You may have a document that says it's been met. If you have a document that says, we took this 36-inch tree down, got a document that says we took the tree down, it's right here, it's got to be done, right? You go out and the tree's still there. So my point is, there are things that were not done. Just because there's a document that says it was done, doesn't mean that it was. But that's a moot point in my perspective.
I'm sorry, I missed the first point, the first part of the point you were trying to
In other
make.
words, you said everything's been done.
According to the return of the bond, that shows that they met, the HOA then met.
And that's what I'm saying to you, is you can have a document that says something's been done, but it.
I understand what you're saying, but the city position at that point returned the bond.
For the record, we can't get,
My point is that at this point in the game, I don't really think we need to concern ourselves with what was done, why wasn't it done. We just need to move forward as a city.
I agree.
Responsibility for stuff and accept the fact that things that should have been done were not. Accept the fact that people in positions of responsibility that were supposed to get those things done didn't.
On both sides, maybe on both sides.
Right, exactly, that's my point. So, I personally think the city administrator did what he's supposed to do. He investigated the problem, he went to the city engineer, he went to the city attorney, he's doing everything he can to protect everyone in the city to make sure that he's not putting us in a situation where there's liable to everyone in the city. And so he did what he did. Now, we have an opportunity as a board to come in here and say, look, I understand what you have to say, Scott, I understand what you have to say, Lee, and this is what I think is more important today than maybe those things. And of all of the things we talk about, there's only one thing that I'm concerned with, and that's the survey. So I would be ready to make a motion to accept the streets and go through the process of doing that as soon as we can figure out a mechanism where we can jointly take care of the responsibility of making sure that everyone's property is not in the road and the road's not on your property. Okay, that way we're all protected. That would make me happy. I don't know if that makes you all happy, but that would make me happy.
all right, next we have Lance Spears. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to respond. I'm going to read from section, paragraph 7C of the development order. Construction and landscaping of the community park shall be completed no later than the date that homes have been constructed on 25% of the total number of lots available for construction in the project. Should construction of the community park not be completed by said date, further issuance of building permits and development approvals shall be suspended until construction of the community park is completed by the owner and dedication to the city by the owner has been accepted by the city commission. That's what I was referring to. We were having discussions back with Jason. I don't think they wanted to build it. We didn't want to dedicate it, in my recollection. But there is an obligation in there that once they got to, they couldn't go beyond 25% of the homes constructed if that community park was not built and dedicated to the city. And that was one of the things that we were going to discuss discuss.
And it sounds like that dedication to the city, where there was kind of, it sounds like there was a mutual agreement that y'all didn't want to give it up and we didn't much want to take it. So we said, okay, never mind. But that was never codified.
My recollection is there were issues, and I think the developer still had control of the HOA at this time, but he had to get the approval of the HOA, and that was taking longer, even though he had control of it. My recollection is that's where it kind of fell apart. There was this drafting of an agreement where that was going to be amended in the development.
Oh, one other point. WLW was not the developer, WLW was a site contractor.
Yeah. The developer was Victoria Hills LC.
And just kind of restating the obvious, we've had several city administrators during these last 20 years. There have been many balls dropped in the city. We've seen it. We've come up against that numerous times. We know things have been done wrong, but we don't know exactly what. We're trying to do things best we can from today forward on everything that we come up against. That's not y'all's fault. It's not your responsibility that we have dropped balls. We don't know if the ball was dropped. We just have to find out. That's the whole point. We're not trying to stick y'all with anything unnecessary. We just got to do it right from here on out. And I think we can. Yes, sir.
Just real quick on some of this. The developer was Victoria Hills LC. Victoria Hills LC voluntarily dissolved on December 29, 2008.
So they put away the bill in 2008. So there probably were balls dropped there too, because they didn't dissolve because they were having happy times. They were having difficult times too, and no telling what balls they dropped. We just don't know, and I don't think they're huge. Probably a survey would have been one of the things they would have done, and that would have been part of the as-built. It would have been part of the as-built, and that was an expense they didn't want to incur right before they went out of business anyway. So, but we can't get blood out of a turnip that doesn't even exist. So we just got to figure out where this is going to come from. We're not trying to do anything nefarious. We're just trying to work it out. I think we've worked through. I think staff has worked through a lot of things already, and we seem to be in complete agreement on almost all of it. So even though it's frustrating, I know y'all are frustrated, and look at having this price tag staring you in the face. It's got to be unnerving and frustrating. But I'm hoping we can get to a comfortable resolution, and I don't want it to take a long time. Sorry we put it off a month, but and as Commissioner Basso said, city attorney worked with y'all on a bunch of details. We worked to get to this point. Now we're just kind of stating where we are. We're not going to resolve it tonight, but we've got to have this discussion. Sunshine law makes it a real pain in the butt to get anything done because we can't talk about this. We can only do it in this kind of setting, and it slows things down dramatically. But realistically, these issues are not coming at us like a freight train. We'll be able to work our way through them in a reasonable period of time, and I don't think we need to feel a whole lot of pressure from the calendar. So we'll try not to create any pressures that don't need to happen. I do want to work our way through Roxanne.
Two very quick ones. We met several times with the city administrator and attorney. This is the first time in this meeting that we've heard that the list was not clean, separate from the as-bills, right? Not that that changes the discussion, because I'm not sure that that's something that we we're willing. So I'm glad to hear that. That is at least one step forward, right? That is some form of progress. The other thing, I guess you said, we don't want to be held to the calendar. These discussions have been had for 2 years. Yeah. We spent 6 months with discussions with the city staff. And so it is a time issue for us, right? Cost factor is a time issue. I know that I spoke to several commissioners letting you know that this was our point of discussion when we came here tonight, with the hope that some of this due diligence would have been done, and most definitely with the hope that a decision would have been made, that a motion would have been made and a decision, because we allowed enough time for you to do the research. So that is a little bit disheartening that is apparently not going to happen tonight. And I think that's a point that needs to be brought up too, that the list, we were not aware that this list was somewhat amended. And second, that we have reached out with information and the purpose of the discussion, with the intent of having a decision made. And then the third thing we would say that just because you were not part of the decision making or what happened in the past doesn't mean that you're not complicit or responsible for making the appropriate decisions.
Oh, we're here representing the city that made those choices. We understand that. We're bringing all that baggage to the table right tonight.
Thank you.
In general, if anyone in the city is having conversations with the city administrator or the city attorney and we don't like what they hear, we can't talk about it on the phone.
Right.
But you can call me. Anyone you can.
I did. We did, as a HOA, we did reach out to Sabron.
Okay.
We'll say that did not.
Well, back to the cards. Mr. Spears and Debbie Ritchie will be next.
Lance Spears, 491 Garden Street. Just listening to the whole conversation tonight, all the way back to 2004, it's hard to imagine that the engineers and the surveyors didn't do their job back then in order to get approval to continue with the development. So with that being said, I don't understand the core samples, the new survey. If they're going to survey our neighborhood, we're going to survey the rest of the city, make sure the rest of your streets are in proper place and not in somebody's yard as it's been put. I mean, really?
We know they're not.
You know they're not.
Anytime.
They are in your yard, I'm sure.
Well, to answer your rhetorical question, is anytime we do any work, we certainly do. And we survey and we figure all of that out before we proceed, just putting paper back over, what may have been a mistake in the past. We try and clean it up as we go. So yes, we do actually do some work like that.
I mean, I know a lot of the streets that goes out by your house. I'm on golf.
That's a nice banana.
I noticed it. I'm around it a lot. But there's no way I can believe that everything just got passed through. And one put like it's supposed to be, otherwise the bond that they received.
Well, chances are your streets are so much closer than any of the other streets in the city. They probably are. But we need to know that before we jump into the ownership of it. We just need to know. It's important. It's incumbent upon us to protect
just our subdivision, or is there others that will be served?
We're not accepting that. Correct. Okay. We're not accepting anybody else. As we accept things, we do it this way. This is how we do it. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're fine. You're responding. I don't want to interrupt you. But I also heard this gentleman state that he didn't know what the expense was for doing so, but he knew it was the most expensive part of it. Well, either you know what it is or you don't know what it is. Yeah. So.
My neighbor does say the surveys for a company and they charge a minimum $175 an hour. It's going to take a figure out how many hours it will take.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lance. Next is Debbie Ritchie, and after Ms. Ritchie will be Alan Coe.
Debbie Ritchie, 310 West Michigan. Most of what I wanted to say has pretty well been covered, but a couple points. I appreciate the take that especially Commissioner Passo initially said that he wants to work with us and the approach that it's time to take care of this. My opinion is that this should have been taken care of back in 04, 05, but it was between the city and the developer. We are not the developer. And whoever's fault it was that it didn't get taken care of, it's not us. So however that was missed, and I understand the city attorney, he's looking out for the city, which he should be, but he's looking to us. he shouldn't be looking to us, he should be looking to the developer, and that time has passed. So, in my opinion, it's time to take the streets. It's city, they're public streets. As you know, we have people racing down these streets every day. So they're city streets, and they need to be taken. And we're not the ones responsible for them. My other question is, you're talking about the main thing now that needs to be done is a survey. Well, for each of us to build our home, we have to have a survey done. So when we have that survey done, would that not show if a street or a sidewalk is in the wrong place? Do any of you know the answer to that?
Probably not, unless that's what they were surveying. They're surveying your property, not the street.
But they do it in relation to the street.
I don't know.
I can answer that question.
Okay.
Yes, if we took every single lot
Mm-hmm.
that individual people have surveys for, and you put them all together like a neat little puzzle.
Right.
And you line all the lines up perfectly, and everything represents, yeah, you can figure it out from there. That's what the surveyor would do.
Okay, but it doesn't show it with an individual home, it wouldn't show.
Yes, it would show yours, but it doesn't show the entire project in its completion. In other words, what he's asking for is standard operating procedure when you are doing a new development. What they're asking for are not unreasonable things. They are 20 years later.
Right, I understand.
That's the point. And the only reason I talk about the survey is because I don't want a situation to where there's a road on somebody's property. You're absolutely right. If something came up, and because it's already nearly built out, if something came up that there was a serious problem with the road on the property, it probably would raise its head a little bit. And that's why I was saying earlier also about the condition of roads, soil voids not necessarily necessary. But all of those things typically are standard operating procedure before the city signs off on it, except it has to go.
Right.
I'm ready to move forward with this because we don't have a good mechanism in place for finding the party who's responsible for providing the information to get them.
Right, I agree.
So, should that fall onto the city? At the end of the day, probably. Because I believe that the leverage that we had was the ability not to give permits. And I believe, I'm guessing, I'm perceiving that the letter that from Lonnie that was passed through early on in 2011 was bringing another builder to build out, so that's everything's been done, that eased that responsibility, that took it off of the new person's hands. I'm just guessing, I don't know for a fact. But, and with that said, I believe we kind of, in a way, we gave up our ability to take care of what we were looking for, what should have happened a long time. It's unfortunate that 2008 happened what it did on the heels of that development. Had it not happened, we probably wouldn't be here.
I agree.
But so on the same token, I don't think it's fair to ask your HOA to bear these expenses. I don't think it's fair to the city either. So I think if we stand back and look at it and say, okay, what's the function of a slope? What's the function of each one of these things that we do? At the end of the day, it has to function. And it tells us whether or not the roads are built well. As-bills tell us whether or not the roads are built what they're supposed to. And I think there's enough collective information out there for us to just say, hey, I think we're probably okay. Okay? I don't know. And I don't feel like spending $200,000 to find out. I don't feel like asking you to spend $200,000 to find out. So, I think the best thing we can do at this time is either say, okay, no, we're not taking your roads, or yes, we are. I think it's in the best interest of your development and the city of Lake Helen and everybody in it to accept the roads and move on. That's what I think.
Right. Well, I agree, because they're not our roads.
I prefer the opportunity to study this in a little bit more in case there's something that I have not seen. A variable I haven't put in the equation yet, But I'm very close to moving forward.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Last blue card I have is Alan Cook.
Alan Cook, 792 Oak Tree Lane. Sitting here listening. At that time when this all happened, I was involved. Big time.
You're the one who did.
I caused. But anyhow, I've been excavating with it for years. I have done hundreds of developments over the years. Now, let me explain something here. When you build a development, before any roads get turned over or anything, there has to be a percentage. Rick brought it up before. There has to be a percentage of those houses built before you make that step to move in and turn the roads over and turn things over. In this case, are you ready for this? When this all hit the fan, there was 12 houses built. That's it. And we got a hell of a lot more than 12 houses there. So that's the reason. Then we got into a meeting that I was at, and Mr. Fidel got into a little to-do with the builder about the landscaping. That's how it started. And then we started going downhill with that. Long story short, we ended up in a lawsuit. Nobody mentioned about the lawsuit. Okay? Now, in the lawsuit, I'm not even going to mention the builder's name. He was a reputable builder. And the name that you mentioned, Lee, wasn't the or part of that. Okay? The builder that I'm talking about built a lot of houses around here. But anyhow, so what happened is we ended up going to court and back and forth and everything else. Long story short, when the court thing was over with, the builder decided that he is not going to put up with this stuff from Lake Helen anymore. And he sold the property. He made a deal and he sold the property. Now, at that point, his obligation, as far as doing all this and everything else, was stopped. The only difference is, when he sold the property, he sold it to a person who sells lots and building things and so forth. Now, in the meantime, probably looking around here, everybody has a different builder. Because there's a lot of builders that build houses in there. Different builders. So, this isn't forgotten. But for 12 years, that place laid over there with no construction. 12 years, there was no construction done there at all. If you were a neighbor like a certain woman right now, she thought she really had made it. We're going to get new houses over there, right? But anyhow, so that's basically what happened. Just sat for 12 years. So it's not that everybody forgot or nothing. It just wasn't ready for what we're talking about doing here. So, in the meantime, all these lots were sold to different builders. And now all these different builders are building. So do you think one is going to be more responsible than the other and say, I'm going to look into the street thing? No, it ain't going to happen. So anyhow, that's where we stand right now. And I think after all the years of turning over developments and everything else, as a citizen of this fair city for 30-some years, I would, if I was a commissioner, now I could do it, but I can't do it, I would make a motion because I know the builder that did that. And if you think about it, every one of these people's houses were surveyed. And every one of those surveys are certified by an engineer. Now, do you think all those surveyors that did these houses are wrong? And plus that, if you did that many houses crooked, development of the streets wouldn't straighten out. So it's very easy to find the streets and where, because you're almost done with development now. So But my feeling is on this whole thing, to keep peace, is let's get these roads turned over. Now, the only thing I do question is, I think we should have a meeting of some kind to go over what their problems are, so we can break down what problems we feel as the city is fair, and which is, and I think that's the only thing, like Rick says, that's holding this up as far as I'm concerned. But I think we should do it, get it over with, and be done with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cook, and thank all of you. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just one little thing. I've been talking to my client about this, and I think everybody's kind of on the same page in terms of setting up a workshop and all of that. The only request my client has is to be as soon as possible, if possible within the next couple of weeks. If that could be set up, I think that would be in everyone's interest, all this discretion, everyone's time.
I think that's a very reasonable request that take place sooner rather than later. Certainly within a few weeks, that doesn't seem unreasonable at all, an expectation. I don't know if we decide to do a survey, I don't know if we can complete anything that quickly, but decisions as to which direction we're going to take, I think can be, we can certainly start the conversation. We can do the next step in the conversation, period.
I'd like to just have a meeting to go over what the issues are, and I'm not even worried about the survey.
Well, some are. Mr. Attorney?
One I, hearing everybody talk about this, something that y'all can think about that's feasible to do, is do you think it's possible to get each property owner in the woods to sign like a release? A release, in essence saying if any of the improvements encroach onto their property, they hereby consent to that property being there. That might be
What's the thought?
We'll bring you all our
Mr. Basso.
Joyce, does the association have any bottles of water in there that Rick could use?
There's water in the fridge.
There's water in the fridge. I found it. Thank you. We are looking for creative ideas as to how we can get past this. Certainly, I believe there's a lot of goodwill here to build on. There's some consternation, but I don't think it's because of a lack of goodwill. I do believe that we can get through this. We got our half points, but I think we can. And we can assume, as I've said, that balls were dropped by everybody along the way, not the least of whom would be the developer at the time. And if y'all remember back in 05, 06, 07, 08, those were rough times. I mean, it was hairy, to say the least. Everybody was falling apart. And lots of things fell through the cracks. Not because of anything nefarious, but things were just falling apart. And we're picking up the pieces, and let's do that as amicably as we can. But I think we can do that. I think we can dot some of our I's and cross some of our T's and get some, based on the discussion we've had tonight, we can prepare for the next meeting and probably do that within a couple of weeks without any problem. Normally we would set up a meeting for that right now, a meeting date, but I'd rather just get together with staff, myself, and look through some of that, and maybe make some plans, and we'll just call the commissioners and get that date announced pretty quickly. I do want it to be within a couple of weeks as well. I don't want to push this out. That is not anybody's goal here, I don't believe. I know time is money, and time is frustration as well. So thank you all for yes, sir.
And other thought, just kind of put this out there as well, that, of course, it would be the goal to have, whatever the agreement is at the workshop, hopefully have an agreement that would then go around the next session.
Yeah. We could even, if we feel confident going into that meeting, we could even make it a special meeting and make that decision then. But we'll, yes, Yes, sir. I can't, if you want to address us,
I'm not ready to be a part of it, I'm just gonna tell you. It's a special meeting so you can vote.
okay, yeah,
That's all I'm
I
trying to
understand. I just did, what I will say, yeah, what I will say is that I get a lot of requests from the public to not get into conversations with the gallery, because that can come through the website and the public record. So it's I'm not trying to argue with you, Mr. Bucky, but thank you all very much. Thank you. And appreciate it. I think we made some good progress here tonight. We certainly learned a lot. We, the commission, have learned a lot. Okay. Next is item 7A, acceptance of, or excuse me, I'm skipping, I missed. Item 6C, Ms. Taylor.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Alright, so we all have 11 by 17 packets of the PowerPoint presentation in front of you. So my name is Joy Taylor. I live at 208 North High Street in Lake Helen. And thank you so much for having me here tonight to come and talk with you about public art for the implementation of our downtown master plan. So before I get into anything, I want to let you know my goal for being here. I am not here for you to make a decision tonight. I'm not here for you to vote on anything. I'm here so that I can present some information with practical sources and applications to move discussions forward towards decisions. So I want to talk about the downtown master plan, and I want to do that within the context of public art, because I think that's a good starting place to the implementation of this. So if you go to page 2, so in 2018, Lake Helen published an award-winning downtown master plan, which was planned with 4 locations for public art. So the public art was included because it's an important part of creating public spaces which are inviting, beautiful, and functional. Those are all important aspects to having a thriving downtown. So if you go to the next page. So there are 4 locations identified for public art. Suggested types of public art are sculptural, monumental, fountain, and mural, with nature elements as a subject. The location I want to focus on this evening is Main Street and Lakeview. So if you go to the next slide. So I'm focusing on Main Street and Lakeview because it's a high-impact location. This is the point of arrival and the arrival sequence. And it's the most underutilized location of the 4 identified in the downtown master plan. And it's the most important navigation milestone in our arrival sequence. So, music, language, arrival sequence, I just wanted to define this a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the anatomy of the arrival sequence. So there's 4 parts to it: portal, gateway, corridor, and memorable moments, clear navigation, and the arrival in a sense of place. So the portal and the gateway, this is the beginning of the approach. So if you wanted to scale this down to residential understanding, this would be like your driveway apron or crossing the property line. Corridor and memorable moments, this is the approach. It's a series of moments that you move towards the destination. It might be important views or important architecture. On a residential scale, this might be important intersections, views, landmarks. So for clear navigation, it's important to know where you're going. You know that you're on the right path and you know where you're going to go next. And then last is the arrival, is the sense of place, and you know that you've arrived. So to kind of talk that down, so I have a video where I drove starting at the gateway down through the corridor and sort of went through what these moments were in our sequence and why I think Lakeview and Main Street is worthy of being the first location for consideration of these 4 parts of the downtown master plan. So we have a gateway with, that's clearly marked.
We have a corridor that has an alley of the large oak trees that provides rhythm. It creates that directional sense that you know where you're going. We have we have memorable moments with architecture, the churches, views. But then you get to the stop sign at the end of Main Street and you dead into Lakeview, and that's just where people drive to run their trucks in the lake. No one knows where to go, they just keep going and then drive into the water. So that to me is an opportunity. And so that's where I think we could improve navigation, where we could create a sense of place, a sense of arrival, and art can do that. So if you go to the next page where it says you have arrived, just to make sure we're all on the same page, this one. So clear signage for navigation. In the downtown master plan, we have signage schedule that talks about it. This would be a great place to be able to say this way to the lake, this way to Market of the Park, this way to City Hall, this way to the police station. So the public art would signify the importance of this place, that you've arrived in Lake Helen. It would become a landmark. So the practical application of this is I did find an artist, so I researched a bunch, and Matthew Plaschek, he has more than 3 decades of experience creating monumental sculpture for public spaces. He's experienced in creating landmark art for cities that add value as well as receive widespread acclaim and numerous national art and architectural publications. This guy is the real deal. This is real municipal public art, and it's an investment in who we are as a city of Lake Helen. It's an investment in the future growth for our city, and it's a step towards building an outward identity through our urban planning to drive future business and growth in our downtown. So he has several different art collections that, if you go to the next page, and that I would suggest are good choices that are already curated pieces. There's horses, sandhill cranes, butterflies. They can also do custom work. When I called and talked to them, they said the city could set a budget, and they would make something that is only ever in Lake Helen, art that's not anywhere else. And they would do it within a budget that the city defined, that like this year we have X amount of dollars that we're putting towards public art. Or in 2025, we will have X amount that we plan towards that. Each different art has different price points. That's something that you can discuss with the artist. And they can, customize art so that it's suited for the space. As far as the art installation, there's another page that's an email, and then on the back of it is materials. So I contacted them, and that on there is warranty, installation, the anchoring. He deals with all the rental of equipment. If there's cranes or anything that's involved, he manages all of that. And that's included in the pricing for the art. And so all the art is created, engineered, and installed by the artist, and they will take care of all the aspects of engineering and installation. And the pricing just depends on what you want to do. It can range anywhere from $10,000 upwards. So it's obviously $10,000 is $10,000. It's not cheap, but this is the investment in who we are as a city to build towards that infrastructure for the future. So again, I just questions, conversations. Please no decisions, I'm not asking for that. I just want to talk about, 2018 we had this plan, and then COVID hit, and we all just stopped talking about this really cool thing that we did together that we all agreed on. And so I just really wanted an opportunity to bring this back into the public conversation and discuss it and figure out how we move towards these goals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from?
I think this needs a two-pronged approach. There needs to be an organization that drives. Okay.
To me, this needs a two-pronged approach. There needs to be an organization that drives the idea, and the commission needs to, at its budget workshop, prepare a funding mechanism for it. And so our responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, would be to make sure that the next time we do a budget or even take a piece of ARPA funds that's available and use it immediately. And that way, when you put those two together, then the magic happens. So I would love to see this kind of stuff continue to move forward. I've always put everything else on the back shelf because I feel like our infrastructure should come first, the foundation, if you will. And you know how I feel about our crumbling infrastructure and lack of funds to take care of it. But with that said, sometimes you have to paint a wall just to keep everybody smiling. And that's what I see art in our community as. So anyway.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
I love it. I love it.
It's a beautiful presentation. I love some of the, you know, from a 11 by 17 sheet of paper, the art looks awesome. It's a little hard to get scale in your mind. I saw some of these measurements that, you know, 10 feet by 24 feet. I mean, some of these are truly municipal scale type things. That's what we need. Your comments about you come down Main Street and then you hit that last intersection there, it really is kind of a dud visually for the city. I think the idea of creating some memorable spaces in the city is fantastic. I love the artists you found. I was searching for artists, so I have no idea how hard that may or may not have been to do. But I love what I see. It certainly fits Lake Helen, the horses and the butterflies. We're a monarch city and have been for a long time. We've got some little greens that we all know and love. So it's good stuff, really good stuff. Thank you. And I appreciate your, like you said, bringing forward the 2018 master plan that did kind of get forgotten. It's good to revisit it and re-energize things like that. Thank you.
Do you have a budget number for our first project?
I mean, I think for a first project, I would want to see it phased. Like, I think if we were going to do something, and this is just talking off the cuff, these are things that we need to be, and I would honestly suggest, you know, maybe the city needs to have a public art board that is an advisory board that makes recommendations to the city as just a thought. Most cities do. They have a cultural board or an art board. But I would like to see there be, you know, that section, it used to be an old gas station. There are probably, I believe the reason we got it so cheap was, according to Mr. Long, is that the tanks are still there. So I don't know what kind of, you know, what could be built there, but maybe public art would be a great thing to have there. We're still there because what else are you going to do with it? But maybe there needs to be some hard safety. Right now, the lot is fully infested with old growing trees and invasive plant material. So it could be a cool place right there by the lake to have some hardscaping, some benches, add in some native plants, and then put in a piece of art. So it becomes a meaningful, not just, you know, a destination, or not just, you know, a landmark, but it's a landmark destination as well. So it creates meaningful space, not just, you know, a visual cue. And then I think the signage is another key element of this, and how that integrates. You know, right now we have that's kind of prime political real estate, right? You know, that's where people like to put their signs. So maybe a signage where people can take those boards and those announcements, that it slides in, be interchanged for events and things like that, but it looks nice. It doesn't look junky because Lake Helen's not junky.
We don't want.
And so, you know, I think there's ways we can elevate this and raise the bar, and that it would need to be something really well thought out, well planned, and that's the point of the downtown master plan. We have a plan, and how do we get to a place of implementation, but having conversations, putting out ideas, figuring out what is the budget of that. Well, do we want this whole package? Do we have to have it all right now? No, absolutely not. And so I think that those are, if we don't talk about it, we don't plan those ideas, we don't set those goals, this is never going to happen.
Right.
So let's talk. That was a long answer.
That's a good answer, though. Appreciate it. I blue card from Jeff Ritchie. Is that on this? Is that on this top? Okay, Mr. Ritchie, come on. Would you like the microphone? I would like you to have the microphone. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And your name and address.
Jeff Ritchie, 310 West Michigan. I'm not here to talk about the woods now. I just really want to commend Joy and the commission for bringing this back up. Joy's absolutely right. She alluded to COVID and all that. So we've all been waylaid for the last few years. And so I really appreciate her bringing this topic back up. You all are engaging in it. I do think it's an important conversation. Lake Helen's green space is its #1 attribute, right? We're all here because of it. Ride our bikes, ride our horses, walk, run, however you want to get on Lake Helen, you can do it. And so we'd love to continue to engage in that conversation, and our bank will certainly support it any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
As soon as we can figure out what a budget is, I'm ready to make a motion to use a certain amount of the ARPA funds before they all disappear.
Yeah, that would be great. You know, it's very rare that you get money that doesn't come with strings, right? And, you know, we all know in Lake Helen, you know, we fundraise like crazy. We are heavily involved in that. And it's not easy, it's a lot of work. But I think that those are the things that really make us who we are. I think they're the things that we attach value to. And, you know, strike all the iron hot. But I don't disagree, but again, I think it's not a, it's a discussion, not a decision yet, but I think that there are practical steps to get in there that could happen quickly.
I think you're right. This needs to be a process where we create and generate buy-in from those citizens, so that everybody's happy when they see it and see that we spend what seems like a ridiculous amount of money, because it will seem like a ridiculous amount of money. But you don't have a nice city unless you spend money making it nice. You just don't.
I really do think, you know, you build it, they will come. And if the downtown is a true expression, outward expression of who we are, well planned, that those businesses and that downtown will thrive the way that we all have envisioned it in that downtown master plan. The community was heavily surveyed in the process of making that downtown master plan, more than anything else I've ever seen be presented to the community with feedback, and everybody bought into that. These are things we've already all agreed on. How rare is that? Exciting. So, you know, let's make it happen.
Pick up that ball that we all forgot we were playing with back then, because it's a good game, and it's a good place to be. Thank you.
And do it with value.
Yeah.
With value and longevity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, item 6D, Mr. Eric Lissy has asked to address the commission on removing litter from the roadway. Mr. Lissy, are you here?
That gentleman informed us that at about 5 o'clock this afternoon that he'd like to postpone until next week.
Next is consent agenda, acceptance of paid bills. Is there any discussion on approval of paid bills report? I have a motion to pay bills. So have a second? Second. Have a motion and a second to approve the bills paid report. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Next is acceptance of the stormwater master plan. Mr. City Administrator, would you like to introduce this once again?
Yes.
Yeah. It's coming.
Some time ago, the city contracted with an engineering firm to produce a stormwater master plan. The purpose of the stormwater master plan was to identify the projects in terms of priority that would be necessary to begin the creation of the stormwater network within the city. That study has now been completed, a workshop was held with the city commission, and approximately $2.5 million worth of projects were included in the study, ultimately to be constructed over the next probably 20 to 30 years. The second item on that particular part of the consent agenda, the acceptance of the Stormwater Master Plan financial feasibility analysis, is to create the number for the commission to consider a time very soon to occur when we need to decide on what assessments we would like to levy for the stormwater utility within the city. So to do that particular study, we'd like to have some assurance, meaning the feasibility study, that the stormwater master plan that you've already reviewed is the one that we should work off of in terms of numbers and dollars anticipated. Now, Commissioner Eckert yesterday afternoon suggested perhaps 6 additional projects that he thought were worthy. Not had a chance to take those to the city engineer yet, but as I mentioned to you in an email, I think it's important that we start with what we have right now and realize that there will be many suggestions made over the years of enhancements to the stormwater master plan. The first one being one from Commissioner Eckert. So I would not like to slow down the acceptance of that so that we can proceed with the financial analysis, get a good number on the assessment, and move forward. And in the meantime, get feedback from the city engineer on the ideas that Commissioner Eckert has put forward.
Do you want to make a motion about adding your things? Well, I'm not right. Did you have something to say?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Okay, some of these items that I added on to, some of them are in addition to what was accepted in the master plan. In the plan, the master plan is incomplete in a lot of issues, and a lot of problems were not brought up in it. And one of them is the water recharge area south of the intersection of Ohio and High Street is not city-owned property. It's owned by the Kirkland family. And the property appraiser has valued it at $100,000. For us to dump water into it violates state law, in which we're not allowed to flood other people's property. So it would behoove us to look into adding the purchase of that land to the requirements for High Street, even if we only purchase the north half where the water recharge area is and not the orange grove. It's a necessary item to be able to do the High Street drainage correctly and legally. And there's a couple other ones that have been brought up over the past couple of years that never were entered into this. And like I said at the meeting, this master plan to me is nothing but a knee-jerk reaction to the 2 past storms that we had, because that's all it addresses is the flooding issues that were there. And one of the corrections on it I added into mine that includes the Lake Helen area is actually for the city to obtain some right-of-way, which would not be very far, to install an overflow drain down, I believe it's Cooper Lane and McKenzie, with a discharge into the Deep Creek recharge area. This would solve some of the flooding problems of the neighbors up there on North Euclid, I believe it is, and Cloud Avenue area. So that's a lot of the ones that are in my additions are enhancements to what's already been in the draft master plan.
Okay. Just for, not to be argumentative, but you call this plan a knee-jerk reaction to the storms, but this was started well before the storms ever happened.
This line are all dealing with issues that occurred after the storms.
I think the storms creating those issues kind of bore out much of the report. It's a chicken and egg thing, which came first. It doesn't really matter in many ways. I wasn't trying to be argumentative. The engineer, when he presented the master plan, made that comment that much of what we saw in the storm bore out what they had found during their preparing of this plan. And he also said that it will be incomplete. We did see some things that they didn't expect, and there will be other projects certainly that the city might want to bring in and start doing. This will not prohibit us in any way from bringing in additional projects or even in how we prioritize them. It just was a starting point. And it also, going from item B here, acceptance of the master plan, takes us to item C, which gets us to where hopefully come time to create the tax assessment, we'll have real numbers that will be meaningful, that we can stick to in creating a tax an assessment on the tax that is exactly right. We tried last year, and I don't think we were far off, but we weren't making an educated guess. We were making as good a guess as we could based on the numbers we had. But this item C here, the feasibility analysis, will give us not a truly educated number to move forward with, but we have to have the stormwater master plan to plug in. So, do we have a motion or any more further discussion prior to the motion on the stormwater master plan?
Before I make a motion, I just need to respond. As far as I'm concerned, master plan.
As far as I'm concerned, the master plan is a work in progress. I think the things that you brought to our attention need to be considered, need to be part of the plan. And I think there's things that none of us have thought about yet that are going to be added to the plan. And this is going to happen, maybe not every year's brought something new, but I would imagine several plans will be adopted every 5 years, something new will be added to it. So, as the engineer said, we don't have a storm drainage system in Lake Helen. We have bits and pieces that people put in a long time ago. So this is the step in the right direction. Do I want to stop what we're doing right now to see how long it will take to add what you would like to put to it? If it doesn't take any time, I have no problem adding to it at this moment.
So 15 minutes ahead of it.
Then I appreciate your response, Roger, but it takes more than 15 minutes because they also developed a quasi-budget, and that's the next step. So I would like to know from the engineer how long it would take to add these things to it. Okay, and do we want to wait until our next city commission meeting to adopt the master plan so we can add these things to it? I don't.
Some of them you're going to have to add to it, otherwise you can't even do them.
I already said I want to add it to it. I just do not want to wait.
You don't have to wait.
Good, then I'll make a motion to adopt the master plan tonight. So moved.
Have a second? Have a motion from Commissioner Basso, a second from Commissioner Bishop to adopt the stormwater master plan. And we can still keep discussing it. Have no fear, we will. I know Commissioner Rutledge, you.
So what I wanted to bring up, Commissioner Basso already addressed that. I just wanted to, circle back to what you're saying, Commissioner Acker. about the items that are listed here, and I don't see why we couldn't adopt this today and have an amendment at a later date that amends these items that are addressed here and here, and as a continuation of that plan. I think this is a living document. It's going to need many revisions and additions as we move along. So this is a good starting point. But like you said, there are going to be things that we need to continue to add and work on as we go forward.
Well, the engineer's going to have to consider some of them when he takes and reviews what needs to be done anyway, because if not, we're going to be in violation of law. We're going to end up even in a worse position than we are with the Lake Helen Woods roads problem. And we don't need to continue adding to our problems. We need to resolve them ahead of time, being proactive. And so when the engineer takes and reviews the master plan and they start reviewing the feasibility analysis and everything to come up with everything, it's got to be included into it. Otherwise, we're going to be up this tree without any way of getting down.
I think we need to, I'll speak in favor of accepting the stormwater master plan as it is, because much of it was prepared in a certain format, which is the SRF or SFR, or whatever getting that funding from the state that's 40 or so % forgivable, state revolving fund, SRF. This stormwater master plan was created using basically their template and filling that in so that we can move forward quickly with the right numbers and the right level of engineering. What's that? Lying to me. I'm not lying to people. That's what he told us in his presentation.
He didn't say it was based on their SFR funds.
The SRF, that's what I recall him saying. If I'm misremembering, then I wish he was here to say that I don't think I am, but I'm certainly not lying. I make mistakes, but I'm not lying. I'm not misrepresenting. Wow. In order to move forward towards getting that state revolving fund grant loan, we have to accept a plan that we start moving forward with. So I'm speaking in favor of accepting the stormwater master plan. It's part of the discussion for that. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, as soon as we get done with this, Roger, I'm going to make another motion to have the projects that you talked about sent to the engineer and added to this plan. Okay? That's my point.
Is that a reasonable way to move forward? I mean, we're not trying to.
I'm not talking that you're trying to stifle or put down what I'm submitting. It's a lot of misrepresentation on what was presented and what you're presenting to the public is an error. And it irritates me when that occurs.
Be specific.
We're supposed to, the information about this draft plan being done according with the SRF funds. SRF funds has a requirement that is nothing near this. This is, their requirement is a basic thing that you have to have a plan to be able to submit in to receive the funds, to even put in for the funds. They don't have a template that says that you got to go by this guideline to do it. They only specify that you have a plan. If this was based on SFR funds, there are so many violations of state law in this plan. That is going to, single one of them that crosses a state property or a county property that has not been vetted by those organizations is in violation of state law. Any of the plans that dumps the water on other people's property is a violation of state law.
Unless it already naturally goes there anyway.
It's not naturally going to go there until we put the pipes there. Because right now, there's a couple of plants that don't have any pipes going to those locations.
When we get in the fire department, okay, I'll let you speak as an expert. But if you're going to talk about underground utilities and how that stuff works, let's just assume I know a little something about it. You're right.
Let's assume I know a little bit about it because I've been through the hazmat training and everything else that deals with all that stuff and how to control the flow of fluid.
If you'll allow me to finish, yes, if you put a pipe in the ground, you can direct water from one place to the next. You have to get permits to do all of that stuff. But if you don't put a pipe in the ground and the water comes to a certain height and it spills over where it naturally goes, you can move that water through a pipe to the same place. What you were talking about, going across property that's owned by the state, the county, whatever, you're absolutely right. You can get it without permits. But when you can make a plan that says this is what we're going to do, and then when you get to go do it, you contact the state, you contact the county, you get the permits to move the water across the property. So this is not a piece of crap. It's not full of what you call misrepresentation, et cetera, et cetera. It's not complete because it's a working document.
I will say, if I can interrupt you for 1 second, I do remember the engineer saying that this is, if this is a 10-step process to get from, we got water on the ground, or what are we going to do with it, to having a culvert in the ground. If there's 10 steps in between, where this is like along step 2 or 3, maybe. Then you do go, once you get deeper into the engineering, you find out, you do the research, you find out exactly who owns what and who needs to be involved in the permitting process. He was very upfront about the fact that there's a lot in this that is very incomplete. This is just a beginning of a plan.
And I believe in the last meeting, when we discussed this, I brought up the point about property acquisition.
You did.
And that was addressed. So to your concerns, Commissioner Eckert, I think some of that will be remedied as we address these projects, project by project. We will be able to see at that point where you're saying water will be going, we will be able to, at that point, figure out land acquisition. That's not addressed here yet. So I understand your concern, and a very valid concern, and I have the same one.
Well, I think we've spoken through much of this, and we're not done, but this will be a good place to insert public comment. Nancy Weir, if you would. And if you would use this, I know, it's a thing. It does. Yeah, don't point it towards that.
I believe approving this, I appreciate and applaud Commissioner Garcia. We talked about some of this in the workshop in the land acquisition, specifically the Ohio High area. And we talked about that area being traditionally St. Paul. However, that is private owned property, and you're talking about approving a plan that is going to, right off the bat, run that water in there. And if you want to say it's naturally run, that is where all the flooding is, and it's not natural. It's already been established. That's what needs to be shaped down. So I do think someone responsible needs to contact the owner and have a discussion with them, because I don't believe anyone from the city has. And yet we have plans to further flood their property.
You know what I believe? I believe that when we hire an engineer to do a project for us, please, they are going to get the proper permitting.
I heard you speak against
Can I
it.
finish, please? Can I please finish?
Yes, you may.
Good. I think they will provide drawings for us, they'll provide permitting for us, they'll provide land acquisition.
And how does that work for us so far?
Just step on me every time I open my mouth.
No, but I think we need to have real conversations. We can't be done. We are all neighbors.
Go ahead and finish your time, if you would. Thank you.
I need my mic. Thank you.
Could you bring the mic back? And Commissioner Basso's point, I do agree that, as I said, this is steps 1 and 2 of a 10, maybe 100-step process. And the engineer said very clearly that, we had some of these questions in the workshop. He said very clearly that he understands these, some of these things may or may not be possible when we get deeper into the engineering or whatever the right word exactly is. They may be more expensive. They may not be possible. People may not want to sell us the land. There's a lot of things we don't know. There's all kinds of things that can come up, but we will cross those bridges when we come to them. This is a plan of what direction we want to go with a stormwater master plan that looks at the whole city, which we have never done before. I believe it's a good starting point. There's certainly room for improvement. But you'll never get better unless you start. And I think this is a good start. This was started before I was mayor. These things come together a long time, over a long period of time, very slowly. And that's, engineering is inherently very slow.
The only thing I ask is that if I'm making a comment about something, don't ask me for specifics, and then when I start explaining specifics, tear me apart for it. Because you ask the questions, I try to give you answers, and all you guys do is tear me apart for it. So tough. Get thicker skin like I've got and
what I'll say, and I appreciate your right to defend yourself in that way, but you also, I will say, when you started with accusations like this is against state law, and it's
and violations of state law in it that need to be corrected, which I understand the engineers want to go through it and correct them before they get to it. But as it stands, is what I said, as it stands, it has errors.
And I disagree, so let's move on.
Yeah, we've all stated our points. That's a fair statement. So we have a motion and a second to approve the stormwater master plan as presented. Any further discussion? We'll call the question. Zone 1.
Yes.
Zone 2?
Yes.
Zone 3? Yes. Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The plan is accepted as a starting point. I guess I shouldn't add that. I don't need to make comments at this point.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make another motion.
Commissioner Basso, you have the floor.
I'd like to take the recommendations that Commissioner Eckert has made and have them to send them to the engineer to add to the master plan.
I have a motion from Commissioner Basso, a second from Commissioner Eckert to forward the recommendations from Commissioner Eckert to the engineer. And the motion was to add them to the master plan. Well, we have a motion and a second for that. Do you want to support, speak towards your motion in discussion?
This is going to happen every time we come up with a stormwater project that needs to be addressed. It's going to go to the engineer and add it to the master plan. It's because once you start, typically speaking, you get into larger municipalities, you start a project, and you try to anticipate what's going to happen uphill. You may put in a larger pipe today, okay, in anticipation of what may come and be collected along the way. So these recommendations that Roger's making they're excellent recommendations, and they need to be added. It doesn't stop us from taking this document right here, using it to get funding to go forward, okay? Because this won't be the last time we're going someplace to get funding to do our projects. And we have not said, okay, what project comes first or second? There's a plethora of projects that are in here. When we add these ones Roger's talking about, they may move to the front of the pile because they're more important than anything else, okay? So this process of adding to the master plan is going to be a naturally occurring event that's going to happen over the history of the city.
Additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. So, and the motion is that we add the projects that were presented by Commissioner Eckert to, that were forwarded to the engineer to be added to the master plan, stormwater master plan.
Is that for consideration to be added to, or just to be added?
That was my question too.
I know that seems very technical, but.
No, I had the same question in my mind. Do we want him to come back with his recommendations, or do we want him simply to start the engineering process? I don't know.
In the process, it opens up the opportunity for conversation and communication. And then when that goes there, he may say, hey, Roger, this particular thing that you're talking about, it hasn't been developed in depth because we haven't engineered that specific project, but we're going to identify it as part of the plan. So going forward, in other words, as we send these to him to add to it, then he will look at any questions that he has that concerns these particular items. He'll ask those questions, and then we can eventually add them to the plan, and then whatever the number is.
There's a couple of them he's going to have to go out and
yes,
physically look at to see what.
He didn't even know anything about that canal that's dug out east of town that goes into Deep Creek. And what you were talking about heads over and drives that and blah, blah, blah. So it is our responsibility that when we identify something that's not in our master plan, to say, hey, Mr. Engineer, would you please add these to our master plan? Now, his job is to go out and investigate, okay, and make sure, and then add them the way they need to be added. But
and give us an opinion as to how much of a priority it should be.
That's the process.
Yeah. So does that answer your question, Commissioner Rose?
Yes.
Sure. I had the exact same question in my mind as to whether this was a direction to do full engineering or just simply to look at it and start the investigation and come back to us with.
No, because it's more like, okay, you're going to build a new house, and you have the land survey, and you have the house building survey. Well, now you want to go back and put an auxiliary building in. You don't have to survey the property again, you don't have to put the house on, you have to do all those things. You just need to put that building in. So that's what the master plan does. It gives you the template. So when we come on, hey, what about this? Oh, okay, let's fit that in.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the question. Zone 1?
Yes.
Zone 2? Yes. Zone 3?
Yes.
Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Now, item 7C, acceptance of the stormwater master plan financial feasibility analysis. We had a proposal in the workshop from Raftalis and Associates. Do you want to present this, Mr. City Administrator? Here, let me pass you mine.
Basically, you recall last year, we had an issue with the creation of an acceptable assessment amount for stormwater. This year, in anticipation of the deadline, we wanted to have a professional analysis of the assessment so we have the proper amount. Now that you've adopted the stormwater master plan, which I understand will be amended from time to time, that particular consultant will have something to work off of, and we will have a number that can be logically used to fund the projects that are in the foreseeable future. And that's basically what we'll come back with is an assessment number that we can then count on to be one to fund the projects, albeit not once over the years of the master plan. Using, I might do SRF funding as an alternate source too. Basically, your stormwater assessments usually deal with maintenance and your capital items that are from SRF funding and to pay back the SRF funding.
Will this document also help us assist us in getting grants?
No, they don't do grants.
No, will this process the information?
Oh, absolutely. Again, there's some misunderstanding in terms of format, but the application for SR grants is very detailed, specific as to what they want to see in terms of information, and the plan is written so that that information is available to us without having to go look for it or recreate it. It's there. So they don't, Roger's right, they don't have a format for us to follow, but the information that we'll need to fill out the forms is in there, is in the study.
Good. That's what this company is going to provide us, is
Yes.
the feasibility and what it's going to cost.
Yes. And the assessment number that we will use for the assessment, when we come around to have that, it's in June.
So we have the stormwater master plan financial feasibility analysis presentation from Raptels and Associates at the workshop meeting. We were in favor of bringing it forward to this commission meeting for acceptance and to engage them to provide this service to us. So I have a motion to move forward with that. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the proposal for a financial feasibility study to be prepared by Raptels and Associates. Any further discussion?
Wasn't a couple of people
Was that them standing out there?
that might have
I don't know. I think that might be somebody else.
Was my son? What was the emergency do?
Right.
Okay, as we go with it.
Okay. I don't think we need them for this. Any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. You want to take a 10-minute recess while I was going? I'll take a brief recess. Thank you.